Hello everyone, this is my video entry for the Domination Guild Unique Challenge for Blight League. My unique was Azanath's Chant. Now, Azanath's Chant is a helm, iron circlet, with some basic mods like attack, cast speed, increased energy shield, stun and block recovery, mana regen, and movement. But the most important one is the 25% chance to trigger a socketed spell when you attack with a bow. That mod meant I needed to make a bow build. But what kind of build to make? Bow builds aren't really powerful during Blight League. The most powerful builds are summoners, so I thought I'd try to combine those two and create something better. On one hand, you have typical bow Deadeye build where you run around and hit things. On the other hand, you have a summoner build where you stand around and let other things hit things. So if I combine them into a Deadeye summoner, I should be able to have minions running around attacking things while I stay in the back hitting things with my bow. Let's go through the gear. First up, everything starts with the bow. This is Lionized Glare Imperial Bow. Now it has some other stats like increased elemental damage, increased physical damage, increased attack speed, a little mana, but the main important one is hits can't be evaded. That means every time you shoot at something, you're going to hit it. And the attack speed, attacks per second, is 1.73, which is decent, but we can get that better. The gems I have in here, it's a 6 link. Starts with Elemental Hit. Elemental Hit alternates the element used on the bow each time you attack. And that's paired with greater multiple projectile support, so it adds 4 projectiles. So now we're attacking almost 4 times a second. Added a Mirage Archer support, so not only am I attacking, but I have an archer on top of my head that's also attacking with my bow. Added faster attacks, so now the hits are roughly 4 hits per second. Added an empowered gem to increase the level of the ele hit. And elemental damage with attack support, which adds more elemental damage. All of this together means our ele hit DPS is around 24,000 at base level. That seems to be good enough to clear most things. But for this build, the attacks with ele hits are secondary. Because the hits can't be evaded, and with our gems set up and some parts on our tree, we're attacking and hitting something 4 times a second. That leads directly into Azanath's Chant. Since I attack 4 times a second, that means each one of these triggers every second. I knew I wanted to set this up as a support setup, so the first gem is Desecrate. Desecrate creates 5 corpses on the ground, and these corpses do chaos damage to things around them. And each time you cast it, it creates another 5 corpses, up to 10. The next one's Flesh Offering, which then destroys those corpses, consumes them, which grants your minions buffs, depending on the number of corpses consumed, since you can have up to 10. That's very good for your minions. The next 2 are Curse Setup. I have Enfeeble to reduce everyone's accuracy and damage. Then I have Vulnerability, which makes everyone weaker and bleeds. And in the tree I'll show you, I've set up the double curse keystone, so each enemy that I hit with Lionized Glare, assuming it survives the first volley, immediately gets 2 curses. And the next time they get hit, they won't survive it. The 4 hits a second from Lionized Glare also support the ring, Thief's Torment. I get 57 life for each enemy hit by my attacks and 30 mana. Since I hit 4 things a second, that's 228 life and 120 mana per second that I'm getting back. I can't use any other rings, but this one adds some elemental resistances and reduces effective curses on me, so it's pretty good, and it's like a permanent hybrid flask on my build. For the amulet, it's a standard rare amulet. I added the freedom of movement on it, and it has resists some life leech on any fire damage and increased damage while I'm leeching. Quiver's just a standard rare quiver with increased elemental damage and some life regen. The chest, I chose Belly of the Beast. It's a 6-link. The belly gives me survivability, gives me some more resists, flask recovery rate, and a lot of life, which I need. The gems in here, 6-link. This is one of my minion setups, and I use Herald of Purity. Herald of Purity from Lionized Bow means every time I kill an enemy, I get a Sentinel Purity up to 4. And since I have 4 attacks every second, I can create 4 minions immediately on my first hit. Even against bosses, I have a 20% chance on rare and unique enemies. And the amount of times I hit even a boss without any minions, I can quickly get up to 4 minions on Herald of Purity.
If I have my 4 minions out, every time I hit something from then on, it processes Herald of Purity again, which will refresh their duration and life. So while clearing, they never go away.
That's linked with faster attacks, so my minions do more damage. Multi-strikes, so they can hit more times. Minion damage support for more damage. Brutality support for more damage. And main support for more damage. Herald of Purity minions only do physical damage, and it's only in melee, so whenever they come out, they mob all of the mobs and start hitting them. Down here I have my minions set up on my gloves, just a standard set of rare gloves with increased projectile damage and some resists, and increased damage during flask effects. I put my blink arrow in here. That's grouped with faster attacks, faster projectiles, so it's pretty quick. Then I add my mirror arrows setup to go with the faster projectiles and faster attacks. And with some other items on my tree, I can get up to 4 mirror clones on the screen at once. They all have my same bow and arrows. They don't get my skills, but it's still attacking from a distance with bows. My blink arrow clone can also join in on that if I add it. And the gloves themselves have a commandment of reflection, which creates another clone when I get hit. So this alone is 4 clones from the mirror, 1 from blink, and 1 from reflection. So 6 clones just on here. And this setup adds my last minion. Boots themselves are standard rare boots with movement speed, resist, life, and I was able to get an enchant to penetrate enemy elemental resistances, which helped a lot. The setup is a cast while damage taken at level 1. So it casts Steel Skin for some protection, it casts Blood Rage to increase some damage and life leech, and it casts my Carrion Golem. It's only at level 3, but it gets self-cast, so I don't have to worry about it. I can only have 1 at a time, and the Golem gets increased damage for all my other minions, and my other minions get increased damage from the Golem being near them. The Stygian Vice is just a standard one with resist and some extra damage. The Ghastly Eye I put in it increases some minion damage. So all of these together gives me 4 minions with Herald of Purity, 4 Mirror clones, 1 Blink clone, 1 Reflection clone, and 1 Carrion Golem for 4, 8, 9, 10, 11 minions, and I'm still attacking with my bow. The Mirror Arrows DPS is roughly 5,000. Other things on the build, flasks are standard life flasks. I haven't concentrated too much on optimizing them. Quicksilver flask, Jade flask for some evasion, and a Cinder Swallow urn, which gives me like a hybrid flask is how I'm using it, with a little bit of movement speed in there. Anytime I kill an enemy, since I'm killing a lot, this refills everything pretty quickly. On to the passive tree. Okay, for Ascendancy, pick Deadeye. Started with Powerful Precision, get some extra piercing. Then went Fast and Deadly to get a little faster, a few more attacks. Then did Rupture to add some bleeding damage. If I were to complete Uber Lab, I'd go Gathering Winds to add some evasion so I don't get hit as much. It also includes allies, so it'll help my minions as well. Okay, traveling the tree is pretty basic. I started by taking the long crawl all the way up, all the way around to get Sovereignty. This increased the effect of non-curse auras from your skills as for Herald of Purity, and I decreased mana reservations. This helped a lot with Herald of Purity, so I could have Herald of Purity up while I could still use my bow. I then got my double curses with increased curse effect duration up here. The rest of the nodes are for the minion damage wheel. Life, some minion damage, life, minion damage, life, minion life and damage, more minion damage. Things of note in here are this jewel, careful planning, changes intelligence in the radius to dexterity. I need a lot more dexterity on my build, so all these intelligence nodes I grab, switch to dex. That allowed me to use Lion Eyes. Second note down here, my other jewel. I chose Fortress Covenant because it gives me a lot of minion damage and attack speed. It does change keystones in the area to be minions take 20% increased damage, so I couldn't have anything around, but I didn't have anything over here anyways. I was going to take these for some increased life, but I moved those over to somewhere else, so this would work. The other jewel, just a standard jewel for some resist and life, mana regeneration. The last thing, other items of note that helped. I got a couple sets of these. They increase skill effect duration for Herald of Purity. And then last thing of note is here, Elemental Equilibrium. Enemies you hit with elemental damage temporarily get 25 resistance to those elements and minus 50 to the others. So with Ellie hit, I randomly chooses which element it hits, so most of the time it'll hit it with 1 and they'll get resistance to it, but they drop resistance to the others, which is usually in the next hit, and so it's another way to penetrate any elemental resistance that a monster will have. But that's it. I'm level 85. The 5 more skill points or so, I'd add more into skill effect duration here, more in the life wheel, and there's another node for minion damage in there I can get as well. The best thing about my build, if you look really closely, is the skill bar. There's almost nothing here. 90% of the time, I'm just doing Ellie hit. If I get into an area where monsters aren't dying, I drop my 4 mare arrows, and if I need to get out or need another clone, I hit the blink arrow. My Herald of Purity is always up, creating my minions. Everything else is auto-triggered. So you don't need to worry about anything but hitting things, creating clones, getting out of there, and everything else is taken care of. Alright, this build was pretty fun. I liked figuring out how to use Athanas Chant. I think it's pretty good. It has an auto-trigger setup, especially for curses and things that would normally require a lot of your mental ability to constantly hit one, hit the other, get the corpses up, destroy them, or get minions up, destroy them, auto have curses going. It's just an easy way to accomplish that. And in this way, I got to play a summoner, had minions on the screen during some fights, and they were all running around beating things up that survived my Ellie hit. Could usually kite around, stay around the edges. I did my best to kill things off screen or at edge of screen before they got in and before I got in their range. Occasionally they did, which is the only con of this build, is that I am fairly squishy. Even with 4,500 life, don't have much of an energy shield or mana, and my armor's not great. So if anything does get a hit in, most of the time it'll get me drop me 90%. If there's getting into a mob or something, it'll probably kill me. Bosses are a little harder, generally up to tier 16. You saw in my playthrough, most enemies can be killed close to off screen. I'm not worried with Thief's Torment. I can get life and mana back pretty quick. But bosses, however, up to tier 12 or so, bosses are fine. You can kite around, treat them the same way, and eventually wear them down. Much above that, especially tier 15, tier 16, Elder, Shaper, you can't stay alive long enough. Almost every hit from them is a one-shot. You can probably wear them down if you get better at kiting, but this build's more for map clearing and not boss fighting. Anyway, had a ton of fun with this build, and I look forward to the next challenge.